Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show, aka podcast, aka audio program about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor on this Tuesday, April 15th. Tax day. Tax day. You pay your taxes to USAU yet, Keith?
I thought you were going to ask me if I pay my taxes, and I'm like, I'm not going to incriminate myself like that. I'm going to plead the fifth. But I'm going to do the same for USAU. They may be watching this broadcast, so I'm not going to speak to that, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. All right. Big tax guy over here. Big financial blockade up. It's a weird thing. United States taxes. I really don't understand. Like, they already know what we owe, and yet they still make us do all of this Byzantine paperwork. It's crazy.
It feels like someone took the opposite of how this should work and was like, that's what we should do. Why does it make sense for every American to sit down and scratch out of the back of the napkin and learn the tax law, to send you a thing and then you sign off on it or yes or no? If you know the number, why don't you send it to us and we look at it and tell you if it's right?
Yeah, I think it's complicated almost by design so that very rich people can figure out ways not to pay.
And so there could be an entire industry around tax code.
The tax code probably a TurboTax is millions in lobbying, I'm sure. All right, we don't need to have a political tax law show. It's time for the trivia question of the week.
All right, Charlie, we're taking it back to the very origins of not the sport, nay, the implement with which we play. Who invented the Frisbee? Charlie, I have multiple choice options for you. Do you think you need them, or do you just have this? Do you have this filed away?
I think I'll know it when I hear it. It was like the Pluto platter, flip, flap, fly straight guy, but I don't think I can remember his name off the top of my head. So I'll take the multiple choice. It will help the audience too.
The audience probably will appreciate the help. So who invented the Frisbee? Here are your options: Jared Cass, Fred Morrison, William Russell Frisbee, or James Frisbee Franklin.
There is a Frisbee guy, Frisbee's Pies. I've seen some OGs. Tina Booth has some, the pie tins, basically, that were kind of the inspiration for creating a Frisbee. But it was Morrison is my final answer.
It is Fred Morrison.
Jared Cass invented Ultimate, at least in part, but not the Frisbee itself.
That's right. I tried to throw you off with the Jared Cass mention. I thought about Joel Silver being in there, but I felt like that's too obvious. So I went a little sideways to Jared Cass. But you nailed this. William Russell Frisbee and the Frisbee Pie Company did have the pie tins that I guess were originally thrown around as a disc-like object, and that perhaps was the inspiration for Fred Morrison to create an actual Pluto platter out in California. But there's your ultimate history. William Russell Frisbee, who's Bridgeport, Connecticut, I think was where the Frisbee Pie Company was. I wonder what if a Frisbee pie was good. I wonder if the pies were good.
I bet they're good.
I mean, you know me, I love sweets. Good. Maybe we need more. Why aren't pies our traditional Frisbee food? Why don't we have those? It's literally our origin story is pies. We should be eating pies at tournaments. Why
should we bring it back?
Peanut butter on bagels. Yeah.
Keith, let's forget this podcast and let's start Frisbee Pie Company back in Bridgeport, founded in 1871 by William Russell Frisbee, Frisbie. And students at nearby universities, this is according to the AI blurb on Google, so could be completely lies, but I'll just say it anyway. Students at nearby universities would throw the company's pie tins, yelling Frisbee as they threw them, and this practice evolved into the iconic flying disc toy. The Frisbee Pie Company itself closed in 1957, Keith.
I look. I say we bring it back and we start making multi-world frisbee pies. Uh, these could be the signature tournament treat. Also interesting to note that even back to the origins, people were yelling frisbee. Maybe that's where people yelling ultimate on the poll comes from.
Totally. It's in our DNA. Um, great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you, Keith. Uh, we got a little Breakmark 20th anniversary, do we not?
We do. Their history doesn't quite go all the way back to the 50s, but 20 years is a pretty respectable time. And Breakmark's been at it all that time, and they're celebrating that 20th anniversary. They're doing giveaways over on Instagram every Friday, and they'll run those all the way through Tuesday. So last week's is about to close. If you want to get double the chances to win the prize, last week's prize was some of their new comfy T-shirts. Make sure you want to get some performance tees. You want to get your chance to win free performance tees. You get double the chance with our exclusive code. This week's code is GOALTY. That's with an I, GOALTI, code GOALTY, or GOALTY with a Y, excuse me. I got it backwards. GOALTY with a Y. That's the code this week. When you go to enter in the word GOALTY, you'll get double the chances to win. And that's at Breakmark on Instagram. So visit Breakmark on Instagram, enter our code, win the free prizes, profit. It sounds great. And that's from Breakmark, the official jersey provider for the Western Ultimate League.
Free stuff. Why not? Love it. Goalty Nationals this past weekend. We'll chat about it later. Right now, though, we're excited to welcome in friend of the pod, the voice of Ultimate himself, Evan Lepler, joins us today on Deep Look. Also, the now co-host of his own podcast once again, Swing Pass, over on the UFA YouTube channel. Evan, what's up, man?
Hey, Charlie. Hey, Keith. Always good to see you. Appreciate you having me back on the show. And yeah, hard to believe we're just over a week away from the start of the 2025 UFA season. Yesterday was the 10-year anniversary of my very first Tuesday toss, which is hard to
Wow.
believe. I've written like over 250 of them over the past 10 years. So, about 20 minutes ago, I filed a new one for today. And, yeah, the grind has begun. Let's go.
Let's go. I wonder, how many words do you think you've written in the Tuesday toss over those 10 years?
I mean, it's definitely over a million. There's no doubt. I think like easily each season is probably in the, 100,000 range, because I'd say on average, like, I write 20 to 25 a year, and they're all 4 to 5,000 words each during the season. I've been trying to be a little bit more brief in recent years, but there's a lot of rich material to cover, and there's so many stories, as y'all know, and you don't want to just give a cursory look. You want to kind of dive into the details and emotions. So it's a fine balance that I feel like I'm still figuring out, and probably will still be figuring out 10, 15 years from now if I'm fortunate enough to still be doing it. But yeah, it's a lot of words. Thankfully, I'm verbose.
Well, that is the job in some ways. So 2025 season is almost here. We're a little over a week away from game one. And I'm really looking forward to being in the booth with you for the opening weekend for the New York Empire out west, Oakland, and then the debut of the Las Vegas Bighorns. I've heard you say, and others around the league saying, that this is the most wide open season that we've had ever in the UFA. Can you say a little bit more about why you think that is, and help folks listening get a feel for what to expect here in the upcoming season?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And the big reasons why are there are more contenders than ever before. Like, there are more good players, there are more good teams that we particularly haven't thought about as being contenders in recent years, like a Toronto or an Oakland. San Diego seems to be rising back up. Like, Seattle shocked the world and made championship weekend last year and is trying to follow that up. Boston, they won a playoff game last year, but they still haven't really done anything yet in terms of getting a championship weekend. There are so many teams that feel like they realistically could be in the mix. And yet I think, Charlie, like every single team has questions about them too. Like there are no perfect teams. You can look at, the defending champs, Minnesota. Like, well, did they win because of the conditions, or did they win because they were the best team? Or did they win because they were the best team in the conditions? And, the answer isn't necessarily linear. How will they follow that up? How will they handle a divisional opponent in Chicago who's really ramping up their season to try and come for them? And their interdivisional games, they have an Atlanta team that's obviously super hungry, responding to the devastation of another 1 point playoff loss. And the Salt Lake Shred, another interdivisional opponent from Minnesota, also are a team that has been in the mix. They went to a championship game on a miraculous play that I shared with you in the booth a couple of years ago, the Joel Clutton deflection. But, they fell flat in the championship. They won 10 games last year, but they didn't make championship weekend at their home field. So, there are teams with unfinished business. There are teams that are kind of due to rise up. And there's just not enough room for all of these teams to have the success that they want to have. Like, that's the beauty of sports. So, adversity is going to strike. How are these teams going to deal with it? And the less interesting part of why I think it's the most compelling season is I think even the quote unquote weaker teams are going to be intriguing and competitive as well. A lot of coaching changes in the offseason, a lot of new leadership taking over in different places like Montreal and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, and a new leaf in Indianapolis with kind of all their mainstays from the past decade moving on, and now they have a young, hungry core that's trying to build up. So, look, everybody's optimistic in the preseason, and it's fun to talk to coaches in the preseason about the different things that they've learned about. One of my favorite things about the weekend that we're going to see next week, Charlie, is the New York Empire have an 18-year-old high school senior named Sam McCrory, who played pretty well in the exhibition game. He got bookends, I think, on his first point against Philly. There's a chance he's in their active 20. New York hasn't had a teenager in their active 20, I think, since Tristan Yarder, who went to play for University of Pittsburgh and be a really good player. But having high school seniors in this league is not common, but every year a few new really talented kids trickle in. And how will they adapt to the pro game? How will they adapt to competing not against youth but against men? There's so many fun storylines, and that's just one of them for opening weekend.
Well, Sam McCrory maybe a name to file away for that New York game, because I don't know if the security is going to let him go onto the casino floor, which may be a big opportunity for him when they're out in Vegas. I mean, you mentioned there's so many different storylines potentially to tap on here with the returning champs, with where's New York going to be, the changes to rosters, and with teams like Boston. But what to you is the biggest storyline coming into the season? What is the top thing that you're looking at?
So I wrote about that for today, and perhaps by the time some people hear this, if they're not tuning in live, they'll have read what I wrote. But so since 2021, which the UFA had kind of entered a new era coming out of the pandemic in a variety of different ways. Since 2021, 16 different teams have been in a game to go to championship weekend. So I've been in a de facto quarterfinal. That's 2/3 of the league. That's not bad. If you think of, the same teams win every year. No, 2/3 of the teams in the league have been in the final 8 in the last 4 seasons. And of that group, most of them have won a game at championship weekend. 2 of them have not. The DC Breeze and the Atlanta Hustle. And I think those 2 teams and their journeys are the most interesting thing in the league, because they're both undeniably talented. They both have fun home field environments and just a core of dudes that are their teams. I mean, you think of DC, you think of Rowan and Tyler Monroe and AJ Merriman Jacques Nissen rising up. Like they've got a lot of guys, and you could say the same thing for Atlanta. Even with some players coming and going, from year to year, Atlanta loses Matt Smith, but they still have Brett Halsmeyer, Austin Taylor, Hayden Austin Nab, Michael Fairley, Jeremy Langdon. I mean, they just have their guys, and they bring in new pieces. Like Cameron Brock goes to Atlanta. Ironically, Aiden Downey, Callahan winner out of Georgia, is joining DC. And they have coaching staffs that have some continuity. Lauren Boyle took over for Daryl Stanley last year. Tuba Benson-Jaja took over for Miranda Roth-Knowles. Like, there's symmetry in kind of how these teams have been built with really strong possession-oriented, but also highlight-making offenses, and a lot of young athletes on D. And they've just both had heartbreak. And they're clearly both good enough on paper to win the whole thing, but there's no easy road. They both have divisional rivals that are in their way. Even when DC was able to vanquish their divisional rivals last year, they still hit a speed bump in rare and bizarre and unlikely circumstances at championship weekend. So I think DC and Atlanta, I think the storybook championship game this year would be Breeze Hustle, because there would be two teams that have both endured all these heartbreaking losses in just indescribable fashion. One of them's going to get over the hump for the first time. Now, sports aren't often storybook, despite what we saw in Augusta this past Sunday. But I think DC and Atlanta are the two teams that, in my mind, are just different from everybody else, because they've been going at it, each of them, for a decade. They've got history and scar tissue that is just different from the pain that other teams have endured. And there is also eerie similarities between DC's last 5 years and the New York 5 years before their dynasty started, if you think about it. And you can say the same thing for Carolina from 2015 to 2019, and how they had a bunch of heartbreaking losses to Dallas or to the Hustle. And then we now give the Flyers the benefit of the doubt, I feel like, because they won it in 2021. They got back to the finals last year. You trust them to be in that mix. With DC and Atlanta, you trust the talent, but you don't trust the execution when the chips are on the table most. So, yeah, those are the two teams. Plus, both teams have really interesting schedules. Like Atlanta has a home opener against Salt Lake, and then plays at Chicago and at Minnesota back to back. DC has a game at Carolina. They play Boston 3 times, New York twice, Toronto twice. So, there's just week in, week out, they're going to be playing games that, could potentially shift the story. But when it all comes down to it, both teams know that in order to rewrite their story, it's about what they do at the end of the year when it counts most. So, yeah, a lot of interesting stories, but those two teams in particular and how they are trying to get that monkey off their back, I think that's really compelling.
It's a great story. The thing is, I don't think either team is necessarily the favorite to even make it out of their division and get to championship weekend. Because you look at Carolina, you look at Boston, New York reloading. The Breeze are obviously going to be right there, and as is Atlanta, but they're not on paper the favorites, right?
I mean, I think I would have them as the favorites on paper. Now, I don't know if that means they're going to win, but they both finished first place in their divisions last year, and I'm not sure that either team has gotten worse. I mean, both teams lost a couple guys on the O-line. Johnny Malks and Elliot Bonet not playing this year for DC. Matt Smith, Bobby Lay retired for Atlanta. But they have experienced guys to fill those gaps, I think. And I'll be honest, I have more questions about New York, Boston, and Carolina than I do about DC and Atlanta in the regular season. Because I mentioned this on the Swing Pass pod last week, but New York is like an all-star team now. They bring in all this outside talent, but are they going to have the chemistry and continuity and kind of system confidence that DC has? And the same goes for Boston. Like Toba DeCrana, really special athlete, but how are he and Jeff Babbitt going to mesh together? Boston glory is definitely creating more of a collaboration with the top Boston club team dig than they have in the past. That is a benefit, but it will also create some certain challenges because, as we've seen teams do in the UFA in the past, like folks that aren't playing for Boston's top men's club team probably won't be on the Boston Glory O line at the start of the season. So that probably means Tanner Johnson Go is playing D. Now, maybe that's a good thing for them in various ways, but like they're, serving two masters in that sense. So that's, one of my hesitations about Boston. And, we see them get the miraculous win against New York in the playoffs last year, but I still feel like they are a team that is growing from a leadership and confidence standpoint in those big games. So, yeah, and Carolina's got a new coach and loses Anders Jungst and Saul Yannick and Henry Fisher. And, yeah, they're going to be talented and deep and athletic. But, Michael Avila, I keep calling him Avilas. Michael Avila pushing the buttons on the sidelines instead of Mike DeNardis. That's a change that the Flyers haven't seen in their decade of existence. So, I think there's obviously a lot of contenders, and they're all very, very close. But I don't know, Charlie. I mean, reasonable minds could obviously disagree, but I do kind of lean DC and Atlanta as my preseason favorites in the East and South, respectively. And if y'all disagree, I'd be eager to hear the takes.
I think New York is lurking. I think I got to give Boston the edge in the East, just straight up based on talent. I mean, they are bringing in so many strong players. It's not just DeCrana, Calvin Stoughton coming out from Colorado. Henry Babcock's been a really, really strong player. I like, and that's a team that was close last year. We'll see. I think it's going to be a fascinating battle, and honestly, home field advantage might be the deciding factor in the East.
Yeah, Boston has two trips to DC.
Could run away with it.
You think Boston could run away with it? Wow.
I mean, I think they're the only team that I could see on paper that could, by the end of the year, like by the end of the regular season, we're feeling like back to Empire days. Like, okay, is anybody going to challenge this team? I'm not saying I think that's the most likely outcome, but it's hard for me to envision another team that could be in that position. Even with the talent we've seen added to Chicago and potentially to Minnesota and all the returners that Minnesota has, they're like, I agree with Evan that the more likely outcome is that we have a crowded field of contenders with a bunch of question marks. But Boston's really the only team to me that feels like it has the ceiling of looking like, oh wow, it's everybody chasing them.
So Keith, do you have Boston like number one on your preseason league-wide power rankings? Because that's astonishing to me if you do. Just because, like, what have they proven? Like, are you confident that Boston is going to bring their strongest squad for every road game? Like, we just haven't seen that historically.
Fair criticism.
So I'm not ready to have the benefit of the doubt.
They have been they've been a loose commitment team in the past, but I didn't feel the same way last season. I think that they stepped up in a major way. Jeff Babbitt seems to have instilled a little bit of focus in that team.
I agree that I think the last season showed that they could get a little more buy-in. I think some of the pieces that you see coming back, I see a name like Noah Backer on the list of returners, and he's the kind of guy people coalesce around. He always seems to be a key leader. They have a ton of veteran returners. They have a lot of players who, I know DeCrana is going to get a lot of the attention, but they have a lot of players who do a good job acting as strong complementary pieces. When you bring in an Ethan Forden, when you add him to the group of players that they already have, we talked about Henry Babcock already, but a Peter Borth or even, Simon Carapella, yes, he puts up big numbers, but he's not a player, I think, who negatively impacts the ability of some of his other teammates to get theirs. I think that the recipe is in the right position for Boston, and they've taken their lumps. I think it would be. I would hear a good conversation between them and Minnesota as my power rankings coming into the season, but I do still think Boston has the highest ceiling. I think their floor might be lower than Minnesota's floor, and that's where I think you get a little bit of tension about who to put number one overall. But I think if push came to shove, I might side with Boston.
I mean, I'll die
I
on
think
the
that's what makes it
Minnesota's massively
fascinating.
overhyped hill.
Yeah, I'm with you on Minnesota, Charlie. Like they won the title, and I feel like there's an instinct to be like, oh well, they won the championship last year, so we have to talk about them reverentially and not in a way like they just lost home games to Pittsburgh and Chicago, who came in with inferior rosters and outplayed them in Windy Seafoam Stadium. Like,
And got
yeah, Boston,
completely
Minnesota.
embarrassed by the Empire at
That's
home.
right. So, like, yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
Minnesota's gained confidence from their success, and they have a lot of young talent, and they're a really interesting team. But man, like, I don't know if I'd have Boston or Minnesota in my preseason top 5 in my personal power rankings, which again is what makes this so interesting
Yeah.
because reasonable
Chicago's
minds could
above
disagree.
them. Chicago's above them for easy for me right now in the Central.
Yeah, Chicago's another team that like Boston, you know, if they are fully bought in and focused on the UFA and bringing their best selves, you know, it's hard to say any other team has more talent than them. But like, it's also they have a ton of questions. Like, what is their offense going to look like? Which of all their guys are they going to trust? You know, they've got a lot of playmakers. You know, who are they going to play through? How are the international guys like Don and Soph Monton going to adapt to the UFA style? We've seen international players make it look really easy, you know, dating back to Ben Ort and last year Elliot Bonet and Toby DeCrana. But there is an adjustment period in learning the UFA game and getting comfortable against the double teams and the quicker stall count and the referees making calls instead of, you know, being self-officiated. So yeah, and also Chicago, I've made jokes about this on my pod, but like their second game of the year is May 31st against Atlanta when the Hustle are playing their 8th game of the year. So it's going to be a while before we really know much about Chicago. And they've just had a different kind of build up to the season than any other team. And they have like 8 games in the last 4 weeks of the season. So they're just going to be a weird team to try to get a gauge on throughout the year. But yeah, on paper, that roster, it's really impressive. And yet, you know, I try not to merge my club and UFA takes all together very often. But, you know, do you trust Chicago Machine on the biggest days of bracket play? You know, they've lost a lot of games as the best team on Saturday playing on Sunday. So there's definitely some parallels between the Chicago Union and Chicago Machine. And yeah, they're not that their goal is to earn my trust, but as a pundit, I am still skeptical.
I'm glad you brought up Chicago because it got brought up in the chat that we weren't talking about them. I know that Ruffner had them 3 in his power rankings. I think they have a case for one. They had a crazy offseason. So I'm glad that we at least got to talk about them. And I do want to take a couple questions from the chat. Jason asked, do you think Seattle will back up their great season last year, or will they go back to being rough? I mean, they had a pretty tough run, and the West looks like it's going to be very competitive this year. What do you make of the Cascades and their ability to compete out West again?
Yeah, I think they'll be very competitive, but I also think they're going to have a lot of close games. And they had some luck last year. They had a fortuitous, advantageous schedule. And frankly, compared to some of their West Division rivals, their schedule is a little bit easier than some other teams. Like Oakland has to play San Diego a couple of times, and Salt Lake has games against Minnesota and Atlanta Colorado has to take a road trip to Texas and play Houston and Austin back to back. So Seattle, they didn't add too many big name additions. They didn't lose that many folks either, other than Khalif El Salam and Jasper Dean, who are not insignificant losses. So, yeah, I would not pick Seattle to win the West, but I expect them to be competitive. And I think, when you get a taste of championship weekend, it can really be a powerful motivating force. And that dynamic for the young Cascades team, I think, will only make them more hungry and eager to prove that it was not a fluke. And yeah, the West is so wide open. Like, I think Colorado has the most talent, and Salt Lake clearly has more questions than answers. I mean, that's kind of a direct quote from Bryce Merrill from when I talked to him a couple weeks ago. I think the Shred maybe lost like 7 of their top 10 from a year ago. But, they have a Utah pipeline of young players that are going to come in, names we don't know yet. The Oakland Spiders look closer to San Francisco Revolver men's club team than we've seen a Bay Area UFA team since the 17 Flamethrowers when they won it all, which isn't to say that the Spiders are my pick, but like the Spiders have to be taken seriously too as a West Division contender. And, what a statement it would be if they could knock off the Empire the opening night of the season. I mean, there are so many storylines just in that game alone. With all the new guys coming to the Spiders, Leo Gordon from Brown and Adam Reese, the former University of Oregon star, who's a really good player. So, Spiders also under new leadership, and we'll see how they look. Charlie, what are your early anticipations of the Oakland, New York game? Do you give the Spiders, a small chance, a decent chance? How do you look at it?
I think it's not quite a coin flip, but I wouldn't lay many points on New York. Opener on the road, like it's not easy to go on the road in this league. And they're going to be thinking about, going to Vegas and having fun in Vegas. But I mean, this is the game, like that Vegas game, people are going to want to watch it because they want to see what it's all about. But New York's going to be Keith and I were talking about what's the line on that game. It's like, Keith said 11.5. And I was like, okay, like that's a little too much, but
were you talking about the Vegas
obviously
game?
The Vegas game. Yeah. I just like New York knows that this is the game that they need to go and win. And like, they're going to win that Vegas game. But I don't think it's an easy win. I think there's quite a bit of talent on this Spiders roster. People are maybe going to have a sense of what this Oakland team is from the past, but really it's a lot more talented than it's been the last few years. And the depth is significantly improved. I will not be surprised at all if New York has some struggles to adjust to new personnel on the field, and that game is very close. So, I'd say New York minus maybe 1.5, 2.5.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And look, there's also a storyline where we come out of this game and be like, East dominates these interdivisional games, as we saw on various occasions last year.
Historically.
So,
yes. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I mean, it's always a possibility. I mean, the way that New York has played on the road against strong out of conference teams has been good, and they certainly have plenty of talent. I think people are focusing on like where New York has lost people. They're not looking enough at where they've actually added some talent. They probably have the best handler they've had maybe ever in Calvin Brown. Like, they have not had a thrower of this caliber on this team, unless you want to talk about like Ryan Osgar. But he's more of a hybrid.
Ryan Osgar slander. Jeez.
But I mean, he's more of a hybrid than a pure handler type. So I'm actually pretty interested in this Empire roster, and I think that they might be better than people are expecting. I think there's fatigue at kind of how good they've been, and maybe some understandable skepticism about a little bit of a lack of punch from their D-line last year.
Yeah, I mean, between Calvin and Max Shepard joining their O-line and Everett Shapiro coming from LA. Like, they've got a lot of interesting pieces coming together, and like, how do they mesh, and how good are they? Like, obviously all those guys are talented in their own way, but like, it hasn't been linear ascents for any of those three, quite frankly. And I think, and Keith, you might have better perspective on this than me, like, because you covered Empire games more often than I did last year. Ben Yacht, 2-time MVP, 3-time champion. Jack Williams, the guy that they still refer to as the best player on the team and the best player in the world. Yacht specifically didn't look like the same player to me last year as he did the 2 previous years. And I'm curious, do we get like the Yacht double down rejuvenation season, or does he look like he's, 32 and 6'5", and those guys can lose a little bit of their explosiveness. It's understandable, especially as life gets in the way too. So, I think, yeah, Keith, I'm curious to get your thoughts on like the Empire and the old guard that is getting older, and the new pieces that are talented but unclear coming in, and how you feel like they'll all fit.
I think Charlie is being a little hand wavy with New York's losses. I mean, you lose both the Dross, you lose Elliot Chartok and Charles Weinberg and Ethan Forden, who are all really key offensive players, and they bring in a lot of talent. And maybe the talent gap between their additions and their losses is not noticeable, but it does really sap the continuity of the team and the chemistry of the team. And for a team that is going to have some challenges with players, with bringing players into the system, I do think that's going to be something to navigate. After seeing the scrimmage, I'm really curious how Max Shepard and Everett Shapiro are going to be deployed. Shepard's pretty used to getting his run of play, but is he going to be able to do that? Is he going to be on the O-line? Is he going to be operating with Jack Williams and Marquez? Are they both going to be on that line? I do think that Yacht is probably done being an MVP candidate, but I still think he'll obviously be a successful offensive piece. But is he going to defer more to Everett Shapiro? Are we going to see Shapiro on the O-line? Is he going to take some more of those big man reps? There's a bunch of talent on the roster. That's sure that they're going to compete in the East, and they have the ability to win the East still. But they don't have the intimidation factor of the Empire of old. And I think that we could see a bit of growing pains as they adjust to having these new faces in significant roles.
Liam Haberfield in the chat says New York -4.5 against Oakland. So he's taken New York to cover the 2.5. MKBHD just made the World Games team. Don't forget.
Centerpiece, man.
Brownlee could have a monster season. I think people need to be prepared for Marquez looking like an MVP.
Yeah. Are you prepared for him to have his attention divided?
Yes.
Okay.
I do think Marquez carried himself a little differently, really, over the past year. Like, he started playing O-line for the New York club team Pony after being primarily a defensive player in the UFA. I do expect him to keep playing D for the Empire, and that's important for them, I think. But yeah, watching him against Philly, like, he wasn't perfect in this exhibition game, but I feel like there's a different air of kind of confidence and authority to Marquez on the field. Like, all credit to him, because he's always been a high profile person both on and off the field, but he's been a very good player, and he has grown by leaps and bounds in terms of like getting that extra 4 or 5% out of his athleticism, improving his decision making 10-15%, and just kind of having a presence about him that I feel like is different this year than it has been in the past. And he's been a really good player in the past.
Right there with you. I think I saw it last year, and it's why I was really high on him coming into World Games tryouts. And I think that experience playing at those tryouts, making the team, playing with that team, representing the U.S. is going to make him start to feel like he is the guy. And early reports from Empire practices of that he has looked like the guy.
Yeah.
I want to take a quick question from the chat here. Luke wants to know, who do you think is the most likely to drop a game to Toronto? Another team we haven't talked about yet that had a very interesting offseason. Between New York, DC, and Boston, will one of those teams lose to Toronto this season?
If I'm remembering correctly, I think Boston has Toronto on the second day of a back-to-back, and I think it is in May. I hope I'm remembering this right. But, Boston, like a lot of teams in the league, is a different team, that before and after college nationals. Because the Glory are going to, in the best version of themselves, have guys that play for UMass and Northeastern and Tufts and other, New England schools in the mix. So, the Glory have sometimes not put their best foot forward in that road trip to Montreal and Toronto. So I think the Glory are my immediate first answer, which is, part of the lack of trust that I spoke of earlier. But I do think at Toronto is going to be a tough game for all of them. And Toronto is one of the friskiest, fun teams in the league. Like for any of us that love Ultimate, that watched then Arvids Orlovskis, now Arvids Karklins, do what he did for Mooncatchers in 2022. How can you not just be gregariously excited to see what he can do with, the UFA rule set, the bigger field, and this relatively unknown but tantalizingly talented Toronto team that kind of got these 5-6 guys from Europe and added guys in the Toronto and Canada scene that didn't play last year just because there wasn't a lot of buzz. Jim Lloyd was hoping that by bringing these guys back or bringing the international players in, these local guys would be like, yeah, I want to be a part of this now. And that's exactly what's happened. So, Toronto has questions like most other teams, but at home in particular, they're going to have some fire.
All right, Evan, I want to hear your potential championship contender list. They don't have to be a good chance of winning, just teams that you give them a chance. How deep does this list go?
I think it's 4 deep in the East. I think it's, if I'm being honest, 2 deep in the South. But
Atlantic
I think
Carolina.
those 2 in the South could lose to the next 2 for sure, in any individual game. I don't think San Diego or Austin could win the whole thing as they're currently constituted, but I think both those teams are good enough to get the Flyers or Hustle on the right day. It's 2 teams in the Central, and then probably 4 deep in the West. So that's 12 teams. That's half the league. That's half
You think
the league.
You think the West teams can win the championship? That's where I'm skeptical.
I do.
I think a lot of teams could make
I
championship
do.
weekend.
Well, because look, would you have said Minnesota could win the championship before last year?
No, but I also didn't dial up 50-mile-per-hour winds. So,
but I think that's the other dynamic, Charlie, that is creating hope for all these teams. Minnesota won the title. We're better than Minnesota. We can win the title. That's the vibe. The Austin Soul probably feel the same way.
Fair.
I don't know how I ended up as the wind chill supporter on this podcast, but here we are. The wind chill hate has been strong in this podcast.
It's not hate. It's an acknowledgement of the bizarre circumstances that led to it. And look, Minnesota could earn all the respect in the world by having another great season and backing up what they did. But you don't want to take away from what they accomplished. And it is reasonable to evaluate the circumstances under which, as Charlie mentioned, the 50-mile-per-hour winds as being a factor. And I think, deep down, if it was totally calm and tranquil, would they have beaten DC? I don't know if they probably believe they would have, but I don't know too many other people that would have picked them. So, yeah, that's what makes it fun.
It's going to be a very exciting season. Evan, you got a big schedule coming up. You're going to be calling all the Friday night free Frisbee Friday game of the weeks. That'll be all back on YouTube. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, indeed.
What are you most looking forward to for the season?
I mean, we've talked about all of it. Like every week, there are compelling matchups. Every week there are going to be good games that I won't be at in person that I'll be following from afar. I'm hopeful that we can feel like a different level of kind of fan support and week to week engagement and intrigue across the Ultimate universe and beyond. I myself and other folks with the UFA have been doing some outreach to all the different countries where we have international participants this year, because there are more international players than ever. We got players from England and France and Germany and the Netherlands and Latvia and Belgium and Colombia, and Liam Haberfield, unfortunately, from New Zealand, is injured and unlikely to play. But more and more top players from around the world are coming to the league. We've got great corporate partners, better than ever before, a new presenting sponsor and Pabst Light, which is a brand that people know, and a brand new product that is coming out right around the same time as the start of our new season, which is exciting and allows the league to do more new and fun things in terms of marketing and reaching out to new fans and different communities and sports. So, yeah, there's a lot to be excited about. I am, 2 days removed from broadcasting the Major League Table Tennis Championship match this past Sunday in Philadelphia, and it's a quick turnaround to get all the ducks in a row and be ready to fly to the Bay Area to meet you in Oakland a week from Thursday. But wouldn't ask for it any other way. It's gonna be super fun. And yeah, Charlie, I'll see you 9 days from now in the East Bay.
Sir. It's gonna be great. Is Vegas gonna get a win this season? Last question.
1. Yeah, they'll get 1.
All right.
Don't ask me against
over under is 0.5. So Evan's taking the over. Keith, you want to commit?
Oh man. I want to take no so badly, but I feel like doing that without looking at the schedule is probably foolish. Just to see where they get. I mean, they do have Oregon twice.
Oregon twice, LA once, are the most likely candidates, I think, to get a win for the Bighorns.
It feels like they're going to get one.
They've got some dudes. They've got some athletes. They've got coaches who are, Matt Bode isn't an experienced professional coach, but he's a thoughtful, charismatic guy. And they had Dan Silverstein, who's been the coach of the Spiders the last several years, is kind of an offensive coordinator.
We're scraping. We're scraping here. I mean, I think they could be the worst plus minus in the league. I think they could win a game and still have the league. I think they are going to get dogged in a few of these games. Just absolutely run out of the gym because they're just not going to be. They're not going to be organized. I think they're going to have some games where they totally just flop on their face.
Do you go into the season, Keith, expecting Detroit to look better than Vegas?
I really wonder. I think no. Although I do think that the mechanics look better on paper than they have in other years. So I also don't know the Detroit schedule, but I think I kind of disagree with you. Earlier, I think you said that the bottom part of the league looks better than usual, and I think it might be the other way around. I think the bottom part of the league looks like they're going to be trailing by a long shot. But that may open up some opportunities for them to get wins should they come across one another.
Yeah.
I think Detroit has a much better chance of getting a win than Vegas. There's a little spicy take. I think Vegas, the talent level is just simply not high enough to win games. And the West is pretty good. I think the only chance they have to get a win is catching a team that like came in early to go to the tables and go to the club and have fun in Vegas. And then they got a day game on, Saturday or Sunday, and they come out super flat. Otherwise, there's no chance. They're gonna get smoked.
Like the New York Empire in week 1, maybe.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be something?
If they beat the Empire, I am saying the fix is in.
What is the money line, Charlie, on a Vegas straight up win over the Empire week 1?
Plus 3,000. Like, are you betting it even at that?
I put $5 on that.
Okay, I'm not sure I want to take the action, but I probably will. We'll talk off the air. All right, Evan, thank you so much. Evans does the Swing Pass podcast. That's weekly, yes?
Yes, it is.
Or multi-weekly?
And it might be multi-times weekly when the season starts. We'll see.
Got it. All right. Check it out on wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on the Watch UFA YouTube channel. Evan Lepler, voice of Ultimate, with us here on Deep Look. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, y'all. See you soon.
All righty. So UFA, any other thoughts, Keith, before we take a quick break?
No, I mean, we got to a lot. There's a lot to chew on. It is the preseason, so there's optimism everywhere. But it's the West should be an interesting race in the East, of course, always is. And then you got the Minnesota Chicago pairing at the top of the Central. It's compelling. I do forget that San Diego and LA are in the South, but LA in the South is just it's the way of the ultimate world, I guess.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking college start of the postseason, and we got some PUL and WUL results, Goaltimate Nationals, and of course our mailbag question of the week. Stay with us.
Adams at the point. Cabriales looking for the disc. Cabriales floats one. Incredible catch. Clear pass.
Get low. Excellent grab there with the lead.
Phenomenal layup block.
Welcome back to Deep Look. If you want to check out the full Goaltimate Nationals highlight reels, check the link in the description, and also check out all of the Goaltimate Nationals coverage over on ultiworld.com. Fun weekend down in Austin. Let's see, Keith. I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah, congrats to the winners from Goaltimate Nationals. San Diego arch rivals. Winning in the women's division, and Boston runs on Duncan winning in the men's division. Congratulations to the champs. Big Ultimate hubs, well represented.
Yeah, it's a fun tournament, and it's been cool to be able to do some streaming there the past couple years and try to keep pushing like what high level Goaltimate looks like. I'm a Goaltimate connoisseur. I don't know about you, Keith. Do you play much Goalty ever?
I think I wish I played more. I have had fun playing Goalty. I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast before, but way back in the day at Emory, we used to play Goalty, and we used to use a shoe to mark the like take back line, and then people started stepping on the shoe, and we made up our own rules, the shoe rules, which became called the rules. If you stepped on the shoe, you had to wear it on your hand until you got a block. In which case you could then give it to the person who you block. Those are good times.
It's a serious sport we play. Arch Rivals, by the way, is the oldest continuous team in Goaltimate history. I also learned a fun fact. Goaltimate was invented many years ago, like way back, like in the 70s. And then somebody got really passionate about it and put together this like huge money tournament and flew in people from all over the country to play in this Goaltimate tournament. This is like around, I don't know, like maybe late 90s. And everybody came there, like they paid for people to come and play. There was huge prize money, all these things. And they gave each city that came with its, top Ultimate team a Goaltimate kit, which then seeded Goaltimate in all of these major Ultimate metros around the country. And that's how Goaltimate basically developed and became a thing. And it's why like every city has different kind of rules and features, because it was kind of developed within each community separately rather than sort of having this unifying, like Ultimate rule set. So pretty cool.
I sometimes feel like there is not a Goalty set in the entire state of Connecticut. I never see anybody here play Goalty, and it shocks me.
Keith,
but
be the change.
Yeah, I like seeing the kind of like tactical incubator that Nationals provides because of the localization of the development of the game. And then you bring everybody together and you kind of see like what ideas stick, what styles of play stick, what stuff evolves from seeing them clash. Like it's kind of a fascinating exercise.
Well, the college postseason got started this weekend, and we already have some qualifiers to the Division III college championships after conf-regionals, as they are colloquially known. We also had some pretty interesting results. A lot of times, conferences come, whatever. It's like mostly what exactly you expect. Not so much this year. I mean, there were some crazy results in D3, Keith, and some big upsets in D1 too.
Yeah, I got to start in my home division, D3, 7,500 club. I mean, it was a nuts weekend in D3. Again, the reigning national champion gets knocked out before even making it to nationals. I'm going to say at regionals, but it's not quite that. We've seen this happen in D3 a number of times. This time it was Portland in the women's division. They get knocked out at Northwest. Puget Sound ends up taking their spot and finishing second in the Northwest. I think they were called one of the lockiest locks by our staff. I mean, this was a big shock. Then you have the performance of Asbury in Great Lakes men's. They kind of just vanished after being this miraculous out of nowhere team. They disappeared. You had Carleton, the number one team in the power rankings in the women's division. They were on the ropes in the game to go at regionals. They were down, I think 13-11 or 13-12 in the game to go. They would have been knocked out. We would have seen the number one ranked team done before making nationals at the hands of Michigan Tech. And they scored 3 in a row to win 15-13. Miraculous comeback, saved their season. I mean, this is the kind of drama that you want from the postseason. And certainly D3 did its part to bring that. And then in D1, there were certainly some interesting conferences results, but nobody's season was on the line in quite the way as far as like nationals contenders go as we saw in D3.
Yeah. I mean, Keith, your team, Wesleyan, are y'all going to be number one in the power rankings coming into regionals? That's it's a lot of pressure.
We'll have to wait and see. It doesn't. It's a cool spot to be in, especially since our team in the men's division is also near the top of the heap, which is kind of awesome for for the whole school to feel so well represented. But we'll see where we're at. After seeing the scares that look at the top ranked team at Carleton almost gets knocked off. We know we got to be on our P's and Q's. When we go to regionals.
Any other D1 notes we want to hit? Actually, you know what I want to do really quick? I want to read off the teams that qualified. So 3 teams in D1 men's: Elon and Richmond from the AC, and Barry from the Southeast. And then a lot of teams in the women's side. Richmond wins the Atlantic Coast. Davenport wins Great Lakes. St. Olaf and Carleton Eclipse qualifying in the North Central. Whitman, Puget Sound, and Lewis and Clark out of the Northwest. And then Rice and Union in the South Central and Southeast, respectively. So we're already more than half of the D3 women's field locked in.
Yeah, and looking at those are the D3 field is starting to fill out. Hopefully we can add Wesley into it in a couple weeks. But in D1, there are also some, you always wonder every time we come around to this time of year, what do we make of some of these conferences upsets for teams that were insecure in position going into regionals? And there are some ones to chew on this year. You get Notre Dame in the women's division beating out Michigan in the Great Lakes. Notre Dame just missing out on a bid, so they're in a 1-bid region. Michigan having a high tide season. Now, do you worry about them? It was windy. They lose 8-7 to Notre Dame in that one. Apparently, a lot of zone on display in that conference matchup, but got to be a big confidence boost for Notre Dame. And then you get Oregon, also in the women's division. They finish like 4th or 5th in the Northwest. And at Cascadia's, which somebody said is got to be the most competitive region in the country. Not the first time we've talked about this with all the top-ranked Northwest teams in the women's division. Then it's up here in the men's division as well. But they finished behind Western Washington and Washington. Tough seed for Oregon. What do you make of these women's division upsets? Is there anything here that's like cause for concern for you? It's moving the needle.
I really just don't overreact to conferences results. I think a lot of times teams are not necessarily sending a full roster. They're playing for development. They have a lot of reasons to do things that are not like play hard for the win. So I'm not sweating weird results, really. And this is borne out by history.
I think you're probably right. Especially if you're a power team in position to like focus on nationals. If you're more of a fringe team, I think that those teams are a little more geared up to play well at conferences. If you're one of the challenger teams, and I think you should maybe take note of some of their results where applicable. And I otherwise, though, I think some of these teams are kind of holding back as they get ready for regionals. But over in the men's division, you get Santa Cruz beats Cal. You get whatever was going on over in West Penn State losing to Carnegie Mellon, and then comes back and beats them. And Pitt, I think they're going to be like the 4 or 5 seed maybe going into regionals. Penn State beats them 15-10. And then, I don't know what's going on over there.
Not good. I mean, I think the reason to be concerned about something like that is that it's not like Pitt looked great at the regular season. It's a little sketchy. By the way, all the people who keep calling for Carleton to choke at regionals, they just beat Minnesota 15-5 at conferences, so it's not happening.
You just said don't worry about these conferences results.
Oh, I know. I pick and choose. I cherry pick, Keith, when I care about them.
That is truly the pundit way.
All right, PUL week 2. Let's take a look at the score results from the second week of the season. A very exciting game between the Surge and the Gridlock. Gridlock going on the road, getting the 13-12 victory. Super exciting game. You can catch it over on YouTube if you missed it. And the Astra dominating the Nashville Nightshade 14-5.
Yikes for Nashville. They could set the record for plus minus this year. Could be tough. But that New York Philly game, I mean, it's only week 2, but there's a chance this could be the game of the year. in the PUL. I mean, this was a very good, compelling game, very well played for most of the way. Couple of spates of errors, I think, really mixed things up. Both teams deployed some zone that I think worked pretty well. I worry a little bit about the Surge's handler core based on how they were playing against the zone. But the drama coming late in that one, Philly had the disc with about 90 seconds left when they threw it away, and Gridlock takes a timeout. They come back and Surge goes to like a junk defense, which had generated some blocks for them. It was effective at confusing the Gridlock. But with 90 seconds left in a need to score, like it's 12-12 at this point. Like, it's kind of a conservative approach. You're going to let the other team burn a lot of clock, and Gridlock basically like walks through it. Then there's a travel call, and everybody stops play. And then thinking that play is going to be restarted, there is no actual stoppage for a travel. It's just people are stopping because there was a travel call. And then the defense isn't ready when play doesn't actually restart because there was no stoppage. So Gridlock just throws in an easy goal and takes the lead with 30 seconds left. I mean, it was a huge mental error on the part of Surge to just give up that easy goal. And then the other way, Philly has it with 30 seconds left. New York comes out with their zone, which had been effective. Dangerous play on the part of Valeria Cardenas trying to get to Linda Morse block. Morse has to take an injury, does keep it. Cardenas gets a card. And then Liz Hart subs in. And I don't know how much the stoppage of play impacted the flow of the offense, but her next throw is just dropped by a handler crashing the cup, and Surge doesn't even get a chance to score in the final possession. I mean, a very dramatic end, but kind of a wonky one with some controversial moments, some key mistakes at the end that I think the Surge are going to be kicking themselves over down the stretch.
Huge road win for New York. Yeah, you got it. If you want to get a good spot in the playoffs, you have to go and win a road game or two, especially against a good opponent. So great start to the season for the Gridlock, and look forward to seeing how those teams shake out the rest of the way. Let's take a look at the Western Ultimate League week 3 of 4. Check that scores. Wow. Colorado 26-12 over the Arizona Sidewinders, and Seattle beats the Wild 19-14. So we're seeing some real separation in the leaderboards and the standings over there, Keith.
We certainly are. I mean, there have been a couple of close games, but it's starting to feel really haves and have nots in the Western Ultimate League, which has kind of been a reverse of the calling card of the league over the past few years. And yeah, you have the Bay kind of in the middle to tie things together. But, you know, as I kind of think about the landscape of all three of the leagues, it really feels like we're kind of getting towards ultimate hubs have good teams, and teams that aren't ultimate hubs are on the outside looking in. I feel like maybe it's a half-baked trend, but there isn't a lot outside of that, I think, to pose challenges for some of these non-ultimate hub communities.
I mean, the reason the hub places are good is because they have good players, and when the good players start playing in the league with more consistency, which we're starting to see more and more of, then the hub cities have the best teams. I don't think there's it's not some kind of like alchemy here, you know. Good players make good teams. So starting to see that separation happening. More to come in both of those leagues as the season rolls on. Got some big matchups coming up in a couple of weeks in the WL. Let's go to the mailbag question of the week. Keith, what do we got?
All right, this week's mailbag question of the week: what would be the line in a game to 13 between the top 7 players from the top 7 women matching players and male matching players, so that's 14 total, that are still playing in college against Team USA, which is going to be the World Games team. So you got your college World Games team from Team USA against the actual World Games team. What's the line in that game? What do you think, Charlie?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's try to pick out some players first who we think are going to be like on those tems, because I think that's an important starting point.
I mean, this is top of mind for me because we are in the midst of doing our top 25 Division I players lists. And there's a Canadian player near the top in the women's division. I don't know if we
disqualified.
if she counts or not. Okay, because she's on a World
Disqualified.
Games team.
Sorry. Right. And also just you have to be US based to play the US team.
Okay.
I
mean, even if you take the list, you're talking what, like Cleo Phillips, Trout Waybright, Tori Gray, Leah Schwartz, that kind of group. And male matching players, you're what? Tobias Brooks,
Toby Brooks,
Glass, Ben Dameron, Dexter Clyburn.
I guess we get Dameron,
yeah,
even though he tried out. That's fine. Didn't make the team.
He tried out, but he didn't make it.
So what's the line? Single game. World Games team minus 3.5.
Whoa.
Am I giving the college team too much credit?
In my opinion, yeah.
They get to practice, right? They get to practice. They have to get to practice. It's not fair otherwise. If they just have to show up and play, then it's like 6.5, 7.5.
How much has Team USA practiced?
Well, they get the same amount of practice as Team USA.
Sure.
I mean, they have,
I still think
Team USA has
I still think you need to be at like 5.5. I think you got a minimum 5.5.
I don't know. I feel like the minimum 5.5, huh? I feel like the top college team is going to be pretty damn good, Keith.
Half of the top college team are going to be like mid back end elite club players, right?
Well, tell me who you're talking about. They only have 14 players to choose here.
Yeah, I mean, so at
most
the
of the
top,
players we just named are like top starters for the club teams.
Mostly, but like not entirely. Once you get basically past the players that we listed, you're going to start getting into players that are not as prominent on their elite club.
There's only like 3 or 4 more players on the team.
Yeah, but that's true, but that's still like a large portion of the roster, all things considered. Those players are going to be on the field matching up with Henry Ing and Don Colton.
Yeah.
I'm not saying scrubs. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying players who are like really not in the conversation for all club or anything. That's the bar here that we're talking about.
I hear you. I understand. But like these players are also playing at a really high level this college season, which probably portends bigger club season from them. I mean, I will say, like, I feel like the power level is a little bit down as we're starting to fade out some of the 6th year stuff that's been going on. But I don't know. I still feel like, like who's the bottom guy on the men's side? Like Aiden Downey? Like he is a great player.
Yeah, something like that.
I'll go 4.5. I'm not willing to go higher than that.
Okay. I think I'll be more aggressive and take 5.5. I was doing
13, right?
Coming in, so.
Are we playing 13? That's another important factor here.
That's fair. I think we should play to 15, but I mean it's a one-off game.
At the World Games, they played at 13.
I guess the World Games they played at 13, which I still don't like, but
I agree. I don't like it.
Take 13.
I actually don't know why they haven't changed that. Maybe because it's just like
bring back
such
the old
short
school games
rosters.
to 21.
They don't want to grind them too hard. Admittedly, it does help with the variance a little bit.
It does.
Yeah, 4.5 sounds about right to me. 13.9. I mean, I guess the question is just like how good is the USA defense going to be? Like, is the college team just not going to have a prayer to score holds? I think they will though. Like they can put their best players on O-line and then just kind of like hope for 1 or 2 breaks.
But how many clean possessions do you think they can put together on either side of the ball? I just like, I think that you're overrating the college kids here and maybe underrating Team USA. I mean, we're talking like the tippy top best of the best here.
I understand, but I just think like
there were very few college players.
What is the meaningful difference?
Out.
I know, but like Ben Dameron was at the second tryout.
And yes, like a bunch of these guys Ben Dameron is going to be like above the cut line. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like half the team's roster is going to be at that level.
Most of
I
these players,
acknowledge that the bottom
would not
half
have gotten
is
the
going to
World
struggle.
Games
Hey,
invite
how
tryout.
about this? Next gen team went out and beat top club teams back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. So now take the best player from each of those club teams and put them on one team.
Damn it, Keith! You're supposed to roll with me on that.
Now, if they played Wesley and if they
Listen.
played a Wesleyan combo team, I minus 3.5
Stop.
USA. But
Listen, Team USA is going to win the game. They're probably going to win comfortably, but I think it's reasonable to believe that the college team could hang in there. That's
Okay.
my take.
okay, here's the brief follow up. We'll keep it brief. How well do you think this college team would do at the World Games?
They would win a game or two.
That's it.
Yeah.
You don't
I
think
think they
they're
make the
like
top
they're not
four.
medaling? Okay,
Mm-mm.
interesting.
I don't think so. You think they medal? If you think they medal, then why are you giving 5.5 to the Team USA?
I don't think that they medal, but
Okay.
I don't think that they medal.
It's not impossible that they could medal.
Yeah, like they would not. They would be competitive, I think.
Agreed.
But
They
I'd
would
have to
definitely
put
be
them below
competitive.
some of the more established teams.
All right. That is going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't miss our subscriber bonus segment live in the Discord. I forget what we're doing.
We're doing win total over unders for the UFA.
Ah, yes. UFA win totals for every team in the league. We're going to make our picks. So come join us live right after this in the Ulti World Discord, which you can get into with any level of Ulti World subscription at ultiworld.com/subscribe. Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look. Knicks playoff run starts this week, baby.